Hello, welcome to my channel today where I will be taking you through how I did this painting, the step-by-step, the little tricks that you need, and the colors that I used. So stay tuned. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, I'm putting on my gloves. I tend to make sure that I'm ink free by the end of the day. When I used to paint with acrylics, I love nothing more than getting the paint on my skin, and I don't know, probably not that great for you either, but with the inks they do seem to stain a little bit longer, so I always put gloves on. So I decided to start this painting with a few flicks of the masking fluid. So that's what the blue solution is on the right hand side. And if you've never seen the masking fluid before, it's basically stems from a watercolor product where you can put the product down and it isolates white areas, and then when you're done your painting you peel it off and you have these nice white spots or highlights where you wanted them, because in watercolor you don't have really a white that you can go to, so you have to use the white of the paper. So I just gave it a quick dry, and now I'm going in with my inks, and I'm using the Ranger brand. I put the color up on the left hand side there at the top, and so I get everything ready. I've got isopropyl alcohol in my bottle. I use 99.9%. And I always start with the alcohol first. I'm working on medium weight Yupo paper, but I still find that you get sometimes a staining when you put that first blob of ink, and by putting the alcohol down first, it helps just kind of dilute the ink right away, so you don't get that round dot staining on the paper, because sometimes you can take the inks really thin and you see that dot, which is most annoying. So I'm trying my hair dryer thing here. It was for the brush. I took the brush attachment off it. The only thing with this brush hair dryer thing is that it tends to dry the inks too fast, and it doesn't really have much power to it, as you can see. So I was trying it out, but it wasn't really working for me, so decided to go back in with the hair dryer. So I initially start by really spreading the ink around, getting a nice kind of coat down there. And then once I've got a layer of ink down, I find that I don't get that staining from putting the ink down first. So once I've got color on the Yupo, I can then go in whichever order I want with the alcohol and the ink. So just a little tip for you there. And so now I'm going in with a second color. This is actually currant. I hadn't decided to use this in the beginning, but I thought it might be a nice addition. So using the hair dryer, I usually press it onto a low setting, and so that things don't go flying everywhere. Another tip for you is that make sure things are out of the way that can be easily blown around, because I've done that before where I've started with my hair dryer and everything on my table just starts flying away. So I put the ink down and I start by really spreading it out, moving it around on the low setting and with the cool button pressed in. Then you get a little bit more time to move it around, because it's not drying by the heat of the blow dryer. So good tip is to have a blow dryer with a cool setting on it. And I just go back and forth, mostly adding alcohol at this point. I wanted to create these marks in a certain direction, so you'll find me going in kind of the diagonal directional way there, occasionally adding a little bit more ink and then starting to thin it out. And when you add the ink, it's when you get, sorry, not the ink, the alcohol, it pushes the ink kind of away from itself, and so spreads it, and then you end up with these beautiful, what they call in watercolor, these blooms. So that's the lines and the edges that you see when you do the inks. sometimes in my class I have people ask me that have never worked with the inks before, but I teach classes, and I have some students ask me, well, how do I get rid of those? And my simple answer is that you don't. That is one of the beauty of the inks. Sure, you can get smooth, more blended effects, definitely, but to me, you're never going to get rid of any lines whatsoever. So yeah, the short of it is, you know, if you don't like those, this probably isn't the medium for you. So I'm going back and forth. I keep going between the denim and the currant in the Ranger brand. When I add the currant, it just adds a depth to the denim that helps just add that little bit of contrast between the colors and has like some tonal value. So that's the main reason. It's not necessarily because I want like that rich red tone in there, but when it mixes with the denim, you get a nice deep dark blue color. So another little tip for you there. Don't be afraid to mix your colors like you might in other mediums, because you will get similar things happening. So if you're just starting out, just kind of get a few basic colors. Get, you know, a blue or a couple of blues, maybe a couple of red tones, and some lighter ones as well. You don't have to get the complete set. By adding colors and inks to each other, you get different colors out of them as well. So give that a go. You don't have to spend a fortune in the beginning, which is another reason I did this video. I wanted to show you there's all the air compressors and fancy gadgets out there, but quite often I just use my hairdryer and the lens blower. The lens blower is what you would use on a camera to blow out the lens, and yeah, it just has like a little ball on the end, and you just press it and it puffs air out of the end. So you can use simple things like that to get these techniques as well. You don't have to spend a fortune on buying air compressors and all of that kind of stuff. So once I was happy with my denim blue and currant there, I wanted to start in with a slightly brighter blue, so that's when I've gone with my lighter one. I think I used the Stonewash. And as always, I always start by thinning the color out. I like to put a base down of the color that I'm working with, and then I'll work back into it with the same color. But I find when you thin it out, especially with the Ranger brand, you get these beautiful colors that come through with some certain colors in the range. You know, sometimes on the blues you get these pinks and purples, and there's some greens that have these yellow edges to them. I love all that, and I don't know, I know some people don't like that, but I love it. So that's another reason I thin my inks out. But it's also because then when you go back in with the second kind of layer of the color, you just get these fabulous things that start to happen, and you know, very organic and beautiful. So I'm adding a little bit of currant to this just to see how that goes, and spread that out. So I'm always, sorry, not currant, it was the denim. So I'm always going back and forth in the same direction that I'm trying to create this image. Sometimes it goes off on a tangent, like those little spider legs there. A tip for that, if you end up with these spider legs, is put your alcohol on the clean side of where those legs are. So for me in that instance, it would be the white of the paper. I would just put it outside the ink, and then blow the ink, so the alcohol into the ink, and it helps just to kind of bring everything back in. And that's how I'm going to do the edges as well. So just keep adding more ink, going back and forth between my ink and alcohol. As you can see, I've not taped down my Yupo. I find that even with the skinniest tapes, the paper doesn't lie flat enough for me, so I'm just trying to be very cautious. If you're worried about fingerprints from your gloves or whatever, maybe just place a paper towel nearby as well, so that you can kind of put your hand on the paper towel on the Yupo, so you're not transferring old inks onto the paper. So another little tip for you there. And so yeah, just continuously blowing that in the direction that I want it to go, in that diagonal direction. Obviously there's many ways to do the same thing, so you'll find other tutorials that are different, but hopefully this one just gives you another way to attempt it. And that's my goal. It's not to say this is the right way, the wrong way, the only way. It just means that this is the way that works for me. So by sharing it with you guys, hopefully it works for you too. So yeah, so as I kind of get to the point where I'm like, okay, I want to leave a little bit of white. So I'm going to really come in a minute with just the alcohol and really thin that out. But I just noticed that I want to spread a little bit more of the Stonewash blue in there first. Because I wanted to try and create kind of a graduation of color. So from the right hand corner at the bottom, I wanted it to be darker and gradually getting lighter towards the top. So you can do fabulous things with the same tones of color. You know, you don't have to go in with a multitude of, you know, reds, blues, oranges, and greens, and they look beautiful, but sometimes less is more with these inks, I think. Just because you get so many colors that come from them as well. As you thin them out, there's so many different tonal values that are really beautiful to play around with. So there, I put the alcohol kind of on the outside of the ink, and then kind of angling it so that the alcohol would then push into the ink a little bit. And then this is how you create like the nice soft wispy edges. You just want the alcohol to pick up just a little bit of the ink color. So by putting it outside the color first, then pushing it in and then pushing it back out again, you end up with this soft wispy edge. So you have to do it a few times. You have to kind of go back and forth rather than dropping the alcohol straight onto the ink. It kind of strips all of it or too much of the color, so you end up with all these kind of circles and things. So by adding it to the edge of where you want it to be, so on the outside of the ink, and then pushing it into the ink and then back out again, you end up with these soft edges. So I just keep playing around with that, keep adding a little bit more alcohol to get thinner and thinner. So I'm going less in my diagonal direction at this point. I'm just trying to get a really nice, beautiful, soft edge to the painting. So my hairdryer is in kind of all different directions just to move the ink in the direction I need it to be to get these soft edges. So back and forth into the ink, out of the ink, and you can see how the soft edges are building up quite nicely. And then just taking a look at some of the body of the painting, I just kind of go in a little bit more, just tweaking it and defining a few areas. Maybe where the ink was too heavy, I applied a little bit of alcohol, or you know, I just needed a little bit more interest going on. You can add interest really fast with the alcohol, and by interest I mean like those lines and those connections that it has as it pushes the inks into each other. Decided I need to be a little bit darker in there, a little bit more depth, so added that pure ink in there. I'm going to leave you for a few minutes just while I finish up the final details and just let you watch. I will be back in a second. Okay, so I've decided that I'm quite happy with how it looks now. I just wanted to give it a quick blast with the hairdryer to make sure that it was all dry. You want it to be completely dry when you're removing that masking fluid. So that was the blue solution that we put on in the beginning. And I'm just using the end of that cotton bud that I initially applied it with because the masking fluid has dried, and it's a great tool just to pick up the dots or any masking fluid that you put on there. It just kind of sticks to itself. So another little tip for you there, rather than getting your fingers in there, because sometimes we can smudge the ink around. So just zoomed in here so you can see what I'm doing a little bit. There's one or two dots that I didn't like as much, or I thought needed to kind of be softened. So all I did was put a tiny blob of alcohol and just move that ink back and forth, going back and forth in the same diagonal direction that I was doing in the very beginning. Sometimes it completely gets rid of the dot, and other times it's just softened it. So it just depends on what you're trying to achieve. But I just felt there was just a little too noticeable down there where it was that little bit darker because of the contrast between the light and dark. It just stood out too much for me. So yeah, you can kind of watch the finishing touches there just as I tweak those dots. And there you go, my finished piece, my a little oceanscape. I'm just going to zoom in on a couple of areas just so you can see a little bit more close up. Sorry, it's not the finest of editing work that I've ever done, but you can see the results a little bit clearer. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give me a thumbs up if you did, and click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on more. Thanks for watching.